Recently, we've had a few customers ring us up and say there's something wrong with the picture. It's pixelated or the signal's dropping out. And invariably, after we ask a few questions, most of the problems track back to one of these two things. There's an old expression in the computer industry: garbage in, garbage out. We've had a few calls, especially over the last sort of month, where customers rung up and, we've built cinemas for them, and they say, look, my picture looks grainy or pixelated, or versions of an explanation that's something like that. Or they say, I'm having dropouts with sound or picture. And this is interesting because those systems have been stable. And so why is this happening? Obviously, we start asking questions, and the invariable answers that come back are, I'm watching an Apple TV or a ShieldTV or something like that, or I'm streaming something, or I'm watching YouTube. Now, if you've got a high-end cinema, you've got a system that's a bit like a microscope. You can see and detect, a lot of flaws in content. And obviously, when you've got the best content, whether it's on Kaleidoscope or on disk, you're going to get an amazing result. And often we'll say to customers, please have a reference disk ready. And if you are doubting your system, play the disk and see how you go. You have to understand the limitations of these devices. Whilst these are amazing, incredible pieces of equipment that bring a world of entertainment, information and documentaries to our screens, you have to understand they're effectively connected to the world by a piece of wet string. And what this means is you're subject not just to the speed that you have to your provider, your ISP, but you're limited on the capabilities of the network to deliver accurately this high-speed content from the servers that they come from, the number of routers they bounce through, and all a host of other conditions that determine the quality of the picture that you're going to get that you're trying to watch. Now, the other thing is that, we had one customer who said, I've got this issue where the color keeps changing. I think it might be the Mad VR. And this was some YouTube content, and we went back to the YouTube content and we played it back. It's actually in the content. So, I just wanted to say, this is an Apple TV 4K, this is the Model 2 or Mark 2. We've actually had some issues with this as well, which is interesting. And we've had a few customers had to replace theirs because they suddenly stopped getting audio. And it's almost like there was an issue with memory where the buffered information was not being recalled properly. You also have to understand that the content is not generally on these devices. It is streamed in, it is buffered and held, and some, depending on what app you're using and how you're doing it, some content can be held or stored temporarily. But these are not the same as a disk, right? They take content off the internet that has to be compressed. They have to effectively decompress that content, and they have to play it in the best way they can. And they have to listen and throttle that content depending on how fast it's coming in, so that you get a steady stream of information. And the way they do that is by cutting back on the image quality or the sound quality. So just be aware that the very best sources of material are delivered by either a process like Bel Air, which costs a penny or two, or Kaleidoscope, still not cheap, or off a disk. Anything else really, whether you're getting your content from somewhere else, whether you're getting it off a ShieldTV, whether you're getting off an Apple TV, or even if you're getting off a server at home, if your network is subject to kind of standoffs and things like that, then you are going to have problems with your content. And you're going to see that ultimately on the screen or in the audio in terms of pixelation, dropouts, maybe sync issues, and so on and so forth. You may have even noticed sometimes that the actual sound and the image get out of sync as well. So please understand that these are really just a processing device that manages the content that's out there on the internet and is completely subject to everything that happens out there, regardless of what system you've got. What we highly recommend, assuming you've got a disk player, is make sure you've got a nice clean disk, but go back to that disk, put it in the disc player and watch it. If everything is perfect, if your picture's perfect and your sound is perfect and you're not experiencing dropouts, then you can eliminate things like HDMI issues and that between at least your disc player. You may have an HDMI issue with these. That's something you'll have to investigate. But assuming that that is correct, then you are going to know that your system is stable. You can then turn around and say, okay, now I have to look at either the way the information is getting into and out of these devices, or the HDMI cable between here and the rest of your system. Okay, so bear that in mind. Just understand that any streaming device, anything that has to have the information sent to it in data packets, which is exactly what happens here, then is reliant on how well those packets are delivered. Something to think about if you are relying totally on Apple TV or ShieldTV or any other streaming device. It doesn't matter what it is, you're subject to the same thing. If it's garbage in, then it's garbage out. Okay, so the hint is the best way to watch movies still, if you want reliability and you don't want issues or you're having problems, is still on a disc. And, I think it's going to be a while before, we can get to the situation where you can fully rely on these absolutely 100% of the time. And don't forget, they're still electronic devices. They're still prone to failure or problems. We've had several failures with Apple TV. We've had several failures with ShieldTV. We've replaced a few, and that solved the problem. So there you go. I just wanted to go through that and make sure that people understand the pros and cons and the limitations. And of course, the last thing is making sure that your settings in these are correct. Now, we've got a video out, best settings for Apple TV 4K. Have a look at that. We haven't addressed the settings in these yet. We'll give that some consideration, but these can be a little more tricky and they're more dependent on, what you're playing them to some degree. But they're certainly a very, very capable device. I don't want to sort of change anyone's opinion on that. So there you go, guys. Streaming devices. There are plenty of others, but they all fall under the same heading effectively. And as I said, it's garbage in, garbage out. Thanks for listening.